Hi, welcome back to the Peregrine Dame. This time, the sun is rising. It's 5 a.m.
Let's go straight to the beach now.
I'm in Rio de Janeiro.
This is what's gonna kill me. That's a good way to go.
Welcome to Rio. Hi, I'm Rachel Parsons, and I travel alone. All over the world. In order to show you that traveling solo doesn't have to be so scary. And that traveling alone doesn't mean you're lonely. So don't wait for somebody to come with you. The world is not going to wait for you. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Be a Peregrine Dame. Be a Peregrine Dame. Travel show that comes to Rio de Janeiro covers Copa Cabana, Ipanema, and Christ, the big statue that blesses the city.
It's actually international law. When you make a travel show in Rio, you're legally obligated to film these 3 places.
So of course you can bet when I come to Rio de Janeiro, I'm going to go here, and here, and of course here.
There, I'm done.
Now, are you going to see those things when you come to Rio? Absolutely. Am I going to spend a whole episode talking about them? No. Because I'm here to get to know the real city of Rio de Janeiro.
While I make a show that's meant to encourage people to get out and travel alone and not be afraid, I'm not always alone.
The beautiful thing is the more you head out by yourself, the harder it is to go anywhere you don't know someone.
I've come to Rio by myself, but I have a friend here who I know from my hometown, Los Angeles. So I'm excited to be able to get to see an old friend I haven't seen in a couple of years and see the city through his eyes.
I don't believe it's 6 in the morning.
His very blurry eyes.
In fact, I've decided to stay in his neighborhood across Guanabara Bay in Nitroy.
See? I'm getting to know the real city so well, I'm not even in it.
I landed 11 hours ago and I had not intended to pull an all-nighter.
Except my buddy, Andre Karishko, is a professional DJ who knows Rio area nightlife inside and out.
I was just gonna go out and have a bite to eat.
But at dinner we meet another of Andre's friends, Bernardo. And well, in Brazil, 3 is a party. Somehow the party makes its way to the nearby college campus of UFF, where there's usually cheap beer and a party going on already.
I know, the sun's coming up.
And now it's the next morning.
Let's go to the beach, the sun.
The beach?
Let's go straight to the beach now.
Straight to the beach?
Yeah, because today the time is short.
Because that's what we do at 5 in the morning?
Live fast and die young. Let's go.
I wasn't even gonna take the camera out tonight.
I'm sorry, you can have your camera. I was joking.
Thankfully I did, but if this is any indication to how this trip is gonna go, it's gonna be a fucking exhausting, wild ride.
And I'm still just in the suburbs. The boys allow me to sleep 6 hours before we head to their favorite beach, whose name I cannot pronounce.
Itacoatiara. Itacoatiara. Slowly.
Yeah.
Itacoatiara.
Itacoatiara.
Yeah.
Itacoatiara.
Itacoatiara.
Praia Itacoatiara is roughly a half-hour drive southeast from the center of Niterói, and it'll take over an hour from Rio. You'll want a car, but it's worth the trouble. The intimate beach is full of locals and the views are dramatic.
I love the sun and the sand, but I don't like freezing. The weather is great, but the water is still really freaking cold. Apparently it doesn't bother Andre, he's a sea otter.
I think Andre's stiff constitution comes from the sandwiches and the thick, sweeter than sweet iced tea the vendors hawk on the beach.
Larica time.
Recharged, we head back into Niterói and leave the sleeping elephant to his nap. Can you see him?
The city of Niterói and the city of Rio de Janeiro really have nothing to do with one another. They're completely independent. But the one thing they have in common is a breathtakingly beautiful landscape.
The craggy primeval mountains that act as the area's gorgeous frame provide the perfect juxtaposition for some equally striking architecture.
One of the main draws in Niterói is the Museo de Arte Contemporânea,
Oscar Niemeyer, the architect, was one of Brazil's favorite sons and passed away just shy of his 105th birthday. He accepted commissions well into his 90s. In fact, the museum is the only reason that many tourists bother to cross the bay at all.
But staying in this neighborhood does mean that I get to hang out with friends and locals that I wouldn't be able to see as often if I was across the bay.
And that means access to home cooking.
It's so nice to occasionally end up in a city where I actually know somebody ahead of time. I've been invited to Sunday lunch over at Andre's mother's house. So I grab my flowers so I don't show up empty-handed. But I'm really excited about a traditional Brazilian lunch.
What's the name of what she's making?
Feijoada.
Is that the name of the meal or the name of the food, actually?
The name of the meal. Big plates, beans, big plates of beans, full of meat, all different kinds of meats inside. Dirty.
Andre's brother keeps the cachaça flowing, and after the big plates of stewed meats, rice, and beans, it's all I can do to slither back to my room.
I'm trying to remember if I've ever stayed in a smaller hotel room. I can't remember one. But it's clean and it's a good price, so I can't complain. I couldn't fit anybody else in here either, but then again, that's not really a problem.
My room stinks. The Hotel Village Icare it's a great little hotel, but it smells like, it kind of smells like cheese, like old cheese. It smells like an old cheese shop.
The other rooms are fine, I swear. When the Peregrine dame returns,
Christmas!
yes, I finally make it into Rio. I've come to Rio, known the world over as the playground of South America, to see what all the hype is about. Normally, I'd be here alone until I made friends. But this time, I already have one waiting.
Hi.
It's an unusual treat for me.
This show is about traveling alone and pushing your own boundaries and expanding your own horizons. And I think traveling solo does that. Especially traveling to a country where you don't speak the language. But it's really nice to see a familiar face.
A face that does speak the language. It's also nice to get to know Andre's city, too, across the bay from Rio.
Niterói's a very cozy neighborhood, and the truth is, by bus or ferry, it only takes average 35, maybe 40 minutes to get into Rio. If you do it during the peak hours, it's going to take a bit longer.
The only real drawback to staying across the bay in Niterói as opposed to in the city of Rio de Janeiro is the traffic jams.
That it's accessible, and it's very chill. It's laid back. It's calm. It's very peaceful.
It's just downright pleasant. But I know you're not here to watch me knock around the suburbs of one of the most famous cities in the world. So it's time to head across the bay.
To get back and forth between Rio de Janeiro and Niterói, it's pretty simple. There are buses that run all day and night, although overnight they break down to a much less frequent schedule. But my favorite way to do it is the ferry. Catch it on the weekend, it's not nearly as crowded, it's a lot more peaceful, and you're not stuck in traffic.
It only costs a few dollars each way, and it's quicker than the bridge.
It's election day here in Rio de Janeiro and Niterói on the citywide level. So people are campaigning fiercely. Flags, cars driving around, sandwich boards, ads, you name it. But all of the people campaigning on behalf of a candidate are being paid to do it.
You voted,
Yeah. Already did my obligation.
but you had to.
I had to. You have to. Otherwise, you're in trouble.
What do they do?
Basically, they put your name in, they register your name, and you can do a bunch of stuff like opening a bank account, signing for apartments, or just try to get a passport.
You're also fined a small amount, but according to Andre, paying the fees will clear your name.
In Rio de Janeiro, samba bands rehearse throughout the year to get ready for Carnival, and tonight I've been lucky enough to be invited to the rehearsal of one of the most famous. And I'm gonna say the name wrong because I don't speak Portuguese, but Orquestra Voador is rehearsing tonight on the bay near the Museum of Modern Art.
Not the Museum of Contemporary Art. That's the one in Niterói.
The orchestra starts rehearsing by splitting off into sections, and each section rehearses on their own before they eventually come together for a good show.
I mean, it's not carnival, but it's the closest I've ever gotten.
Like my own private carnival, sort of. Just a miniature one, a very, very miniature one.
With the sun setting on Sugarloaf Mountain in the background, I have a hard time recalling a happier moment.
Like Christmas! Early Christmas!
While there are professional musicians in this mash of people, most are not, like Andre's friend Pedro, who plays saxophone in the orchestra. And of all the boys in Rio, it's Pedro that makes me an offer I can't refuse.
Rio de Janeiro is infamous for its favelas. Very, very poor, unofficial settlements that have climbed the hillsides.
My new buddy works in a community center in one of them, and he's invited me to join him.
So I'm spending an afternoon in Mangueira with Pedro. Can favelas be dangerous? Yes. Can neighborhoods in cities all over the world be dangerous? Of course. Should you be cautious? Absolutely. But it's not a reason not to come see the way hundreds of thousands of cariocas, residents of Rio de Janeiro, live. Because it's just as important to see these neighborhoods as it is to see Copa Cabana and Ipanema. In certain favelas, there are even hostels and small hotels, so when it comes right down to it, if you search, you could actually stay in one if you wanted to. If you don't speak Portuguese fluently, find somebody who does. So you can enter them safely, you just have to be smart about it.
Here we have plenty of good aspects of the favela because, you know, Rio de Janeiro is a huge, huge city and you don't know your neighborhood. And here we have the sense of community, the real sense of community. You know the neighborhoods. Even me, I don't live here, but when I can, I feel good. I feel they are open for me. You know, they are sympathized. They are with a smile on the face all the time. It's good. It's a nice ambience, a nice field. Yeah, I feel safe.
Pedro's worked with the children in this community of about 20,000 people for so long, he's practically a local.
Here in the beginning of the favela we have some creches.
Funded by the government or for
for the government.
Okay.
The history of Rio's favelas is complex, and they are not all alike. Mangueira's managed to bring in at least some government-funded services like the child care center and the bare minimum of sanitation.
Garbage in Rio climbs in here one time a week, I believe.
It's even gotten electricity.
Nowadays we have electricity in the streets, as you can see. So you have the official electricity that comes out. These cables, you see, most of them they are what we call gato, something that you do, you stole the energy, in fact, because they don't have energy.
So all of this tangle of mishmash is really just people who have connected their own little wires,
For the most part.
their own cables up to the big lines, and
The most part. That's how it works here.
Maybe not for long. The power company's here today too.
They told me they are working, they are taking out those connections, those illegal connections. There is a process of making the favela pay for electricity. It's good for a way, in a way it's good. Because it brings out a status of neighborhood, not of favela.
My question is, can these people afford electricity?
I believe it depends. But there's plenty of families that I know that can live there but prefer to live here.
so they could afford.
They were born here, they love the culture.
With the international spotlight shining on Rio because of the upcoming World Cup and Olympic Games, the city's embarked on a huge campaign to legitimize and clean up many favelas. Coming to Rio, I wanted to see the real city. So when a friend of Andre's invited me into one of Rio's famous favelas, there was no way I could say no.
If it weren't for Pedro, I wouldn't be in a favela to begin with, because I wouldn't have anybody that I know could navigate me through one of these.
this part of the favela I get lost sometimes. I have to.
Oh, good. But that said, since I've been here, and I am in here in the broad daylight, it's not threatening. I mean, everyone has been really friendly. These neighborhoods are full of average people just living their lives. Yes, they can be dangerous, but it's nothing that should keep you away.
Not even the woman yelling. She's just had a couple of drinks and wants to talk. But we're still heading for the top of the hill.
In favela, you have a lot of we call this Umbanda, it's a kind of religion, Afro-Brazilian, Candomblé as well.
This is the 200th motorcycle that has nearly run me down today.
Most of the citizens that live in favelas, they climb in motos. They're called moto taxis. That's the system that works pretty well.
They may climb on motos, but we're getting to the top the old-fashioned way.
If I were at home right now, if you're on a hill like this in Los Angeles, it's some of the most expensive real estate you can get. Like, if you have a view like that, you paid millions of dollars to get it. And here's the favelas that have climbed the hills.
But the phenomenal views are scant consolation for the problems that come with extreme poverty here, like being beholden to politically connected drug lords for needed infrastructure.
In order to keep the residents from really ratting them out and getting them out, they'll build a street, or they'll provide a service, they'll provide protection.
For the access as well. For the rich people that climbs up to buy the weed, the cocaine, and so on. Other way, people are going to choose another favela to buy the drug.
It's time for a beer. The owner of this watering hole is a great example of how families stay within the favelas for generations. He tells Pedro his mother had the shop for 20 years. When she passed, he took over. Now he and his son run it. They work 7 days a week to make ends meet. Here's what little I understand of Mangueira's situation. There are multi-generational businesses, cottage industries like the moto taxis, middle-class families who prefer to be here instead of nicer neighborhoods, and some municipal services. It's the election garbage lying around that makes me curious about the less fortunate favelas.
I can see all the election flyers. If there are no really official city services, direct city services in the favelas, are the citizens who live here required to vote just like everybody else? Is your voting is mandatory?
Yeah, it's mandatory.
So it's mandatory for these guys too?
Yeah, you have to pay if you don't vote.
So they have to vote, but they don't really get any direct city services in return?
There's no assistance.
Private sector assistance comes in though. At the foot of the hill sits Casa da Arte de Educar, an arts education center founded by a school teacher.
Pedro and his co-workers are all licensed psychologists. The program that Pedro works for has partnered with this particular arts community. The center itself is in part funded by corporations.
Companies required by national law to help fund cultural programs.
Pedro's instructing a class in audiovisual arts. The owner of this particular after-school program has asked me not to film the children here, mostly because she's not here to meet me in person and figure out exactly what I'm doing. But I don't think you really need me to film them to be able to hear what they're working on.
They are born with this culture, teenagers from favela. They love capoeira, they love to play music, you know. Favela da Mangueira is a place that has a lot of culture of music. It's one of the things they are really, proud of themselves, proud of being Mangueira.
Sueli de Lima Moreira is the woman who tapped into this cultural pride to improve education in Mangueira.
How many centers like this are there in the favelas?
Iguais só os meus. Claro. Acho que eles não são iguais.
She said that like this one, there is not, because it's unique, it's different. But each one is different. It's a different point of view, different way of dealing with the problem.
The Casa da Arte is dealing with the problems through arts-based education. There are non-profits of all sorts doing good work in many of Rio's favelas. With work done, Pedro and I move from beer to Brazil's favorite alcohol, cachaça. I'm desperately trying to stay sober enough to catch up with Andre in Santa Teresa for my last night here.
This is the principal entrance, the most famous entrance because of the stairs that goes all the way up to Santa Teresa, one of the coolest, probably the coolest neighborhood in Rio de Janeiro.
In the 20th century, the hilltop community became an enclave for artists and musicians. You can find the base of the stairs in the neighboring party district of Lapa. The origins of Santa Teresa date back to around 1750, and the colonial Portuguese architecture is charming. We're hiking our way up to Andre's favorite restaurant, Bar do Minheiro. The restaurant offers up hearty, traditional Portuguese fare, and the crowd is mostly from the neighborhood.
Even though I make a project about what it's like to travel alone and advocate people traveling alone at some point in their lives, because I personally feel that it helps you grow as a human being.
It's still nice to see an old friend with a common link to my home.
With Rio, you could come and stay 2 or 3 weeks and still not see everything.
But thanks to Andre and his friends, Rio has opened to me in ways I couldn't have imagined.
They gave me some of the best experiences that I've had since I've been here, so it's been really sweet.
It's tough to leave this city.
He's right, it is.
I'm actually more sad to go than I thought I would be.
It's cool.
Cheers to that.
But I still have tonight. And in Rio, a night can last 3 days. We cruise back down the hillside into Lapa, also known as Party Central. You don't need a guidebook or a show to tell you what's hot because eventually the whole party ends up in the street. We take off before things get out of hand and wind our way into Copa Cabana. I'd love to say something about how Rio transcends its old world roots and proudly embraces its unique identity, but I can't remember how to speak.
Luau!
Now that's the Rio I'd heard of. To see extra scenes and outtakes, head on over to theperagrindame.com.